Commander Deho stood in the center of the massive chamber, surrounded by alien beings from across the galaxy. The walls stretched high above him, filled with representatives from hundreds of different species. Each one looked down at him with eyes that held no warmth, no friendship, only cold judgment. The human delegation was small. Only 12 people remained to speak for all of humanity. Deho could feel their eyes on his back as he faced the Galactic Coalition Council. His uniform felt heavy on his shoulders, weighted down by the responsibility of his entire species. The ayes. "Vote will now begin," announced the Vorthak Chancellor, his tentacles writhing as he spoke. His voice echoed through translation devices, reaching every corner of the vast room. "All in favor of Resolution 2387H, the complete exile of the human species from Coalition space." Lights began to flicker across the chamber. Red lights meant yes, blue lights meant no, green lights meant abstaining from the vote. Deho watched as red light after red light appeared. The Zenthari delegation, their crystal bodies glowing with approval. The Mokari collective, their hive mind united in their decision. The proud Altarian Empire, their golden scales reflecting the red glow of their vote. Behind him, Jinwu whispered urgently into his communication device. The brilliant scientist had spent weeks trying to build support among the younger species, those who might remember humanity's contributions to galactic science and medicine. His efforts had been mostly ignored. Nari, the military strategist, who had helped plan humanity's defense against the Zerion invasion just 5 years ago, stood silent. Her face showed no emotion, but Deho could see her hands clenched into fists. She had saved 3 coalition worlds from destruction, and now those same worlds were voting to cast humanity into the void. The red lights continued to appear. Species after species chose exile for humanity. The Drakmori, who had once called humans their closest allies. The Thessian Republic, whose colonies humanity had helped establish. Even the Benthic Collective, whose underwater cities had been designed by human engineers. "We helped them," whispered Hyosu, one of the younger diplomats. "We saved their colonies from the plague. We shared our medical knowledge freely. How can they do this to us?" Deho didn't answer. He had asked himself the same question for months as the political situation grew worse. The other species called humans unpredictable. They said human emotions made them dangerous. They claimed that human creativity and willingness to break rules threatened the stability of galactic civilization. The final count appeared on the main display. 847 species voted for exile. Only 12 voted against. 31 abstained. The Chancellor's voice boomed across the chamber. Resolution 2387H passes by overwhelming majority. The human species is hereby banned from all coalition space. They have one standard galactic cycle to remove all human presence from coalition territory and retreat beyond the outer rim into uncharted space. The chamber erupted in alien sounds. Some species chittered with satisfaction, others released chemical signals of approval. A few remained silent, but none protested the decision. Daeho stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber gradually quieted as he began to speak. "Honored representatives," he said, his voice steady despite the crushing weight of defeat. "Humanity accepts the judgment of this council. We will comply with the terms of exile. But know this: we go into the darkness with no hatred in our hearts. We have learned much from our time among the stars with you. We will carry those lessons with us wherever we go." Some of the alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. They had expected anger, threats, or desperate pleading. Instead, they heard only dignity and quiet acceptance. "We ask only that our civilians be given safe passage to the evacuation points. Our military vessels will escort them beyond the rim and will not return. The galaxy will know peace from human unpredictability." The Chancellor waved a tentacle dismissively. "Your request for safe passage is granted. You have 40 standard days to complete the evacuation. Any human presence remaining after that time will be considered an act of war." The human delegation was escorted from the chamber under heavy guard. As they walked through the corridors of the Coalition building, they passed memorial walls honoring those who had died in various galactic conflicts. Many of the names were human. Outside, their transport waited under the pale light of the capital world's twin suns. The city around them bustled with activity as news of the vote spread. Some aliens watched the humans with curiosity. Others turned away, as if looking at them might bring contamination. Jinwoo finally broke the silence as their transport lifted off. "I had 17 species ready to vote with us," he said, staring at his data pad. 17. But overnight, they all changed their minds. Someone got to them. "It doesn't matter now," Daeho replied. "What matters is getting our people to safety." Nari looked out the window at the sprawling alien city below. "Admiral Taemin has the evacuation fleets ready. Every human colony, every research station, every mining operation. 50 million people, all moving toward the rim." "Where will we go?" asked Hai Su. "Beyond the rim is empty space. No stars, no planets, nothing but void." "There have to be stars out there," Jinwoo said. "Our long-range sensors detected something before the Coalition banned us from exploring that region. Scattered signals, possible star systems. We'll find somewhere to make a new home." The transport docked with the human embassy ship waiting in orbit. As they boarded, Daeho took one last look at the Coalition capital world. Somewhere down there, alien leaders were already planning how to divide up the territories that humanity would leave behind. The embassy ship's communication systems crackled to life as they received updates from across human space. Colony ships were launching from hundreds of worlds. Research stations were being abandoned. Mining operations were shutting down. Families were saying goodbye to alien friends who might never see them again. Admiral Taemin's face appeared on the main screen. His weathered features showed the strain of coordinating the largest evacuation in galactic history. "Commander Daeho, the last civilian transports will reach the assembly point in 36 days. We're ahead of schedule." "Good work, Admiral. Any problems with Coalition forces?" "A few harassment incidents, but nothing serious. They seem eager to have us gone quickly. Some of their patrol ships are actually helping guide our slower vessels to safe routes. At least some of them still have consciences," Nari muttered. The embassy ship turned away from the capital world and began its journey toward the outer rim. Behind them, the heart of galactic civilization continued its ancient dance of politics and commerce. Ahead lay the unknown darkness of space that no one had ever explored. As they traveled, more human ships joined their convoy. Research vessels loaded with scientific equipment, colony ships packed with families, military escorts, with weapons powered down but ready. The great exodus of humanity had begun. Jin Wu spent his time analyzing the sparse data they had about the region beyond the rim. Long-range sensors had detected unusual energy signatures out there, patterns that didn't match any known stellar phenomena. It's almost like space itself works differently in that region, he told the others. Different how? Daeho asked. I'm not sure. The quantum signatures are all wrong. It's like the normal laws of physics become flexible somehow. 3 weeks into their journey, they reached the edge of Coalition space. A massive fleet of human ships waited at the rendezvous point. The flagship Eternal Dawn, Admiral Tae Min's command ship, hung in space like a silver needle pointing toward the void. Daeho transferred to the flagship and stood on the bridge beside the Admiral. Before them stretched the barrier, the invisible line where Coalition territory ended and the unknown began. 50 million souls, Tae Min said quietly. The entire surviving population of humanity following us into the darkness. We've survived worse, Daeho replied. We'll survive this too. The Admiral gave the order, and the human fleet crossed the barrier. Behind them, automated beacons activated, warning all Coalition ships that they were entering forbidden space. Ahead, sensors detected the first anomalies that Jinwoo had predicted. Space itself seemed to shimmer and bend around them as they entered the dark between. Whatever waited for humanity in the void, there would be no turning back. 50 years had passed since the Great Exile began. The human fleet still drifted through the dark between, a collection of ships that had become a moving city among the stars. What had once been a desperate escape had turned into a way of life that no one had expected. Chief Engineer Hai Jin floated in the zero-gravity workshop of the research vessel Deep Thought. Around her, tools and equipment hung in neat rows, held in place by magnetic strips. She had been working on the same problem for 3 years now, and today she finally had an answer. Computer, record personal log, she said, grabbing a nearby handheld recorder. Day 18,250 of exile. I think I've figured out why our engines work better out here than they ever did in Coalition space. She pushed off from one wall and glided to her main workstation. Charts and diagrams covered every surface, showing energy readings that should have been impossible. In normal space, the numbers would have meant their equipment was broken. Here in the dark between, they seemed to represent something completely different. The quantum field readings keep changing, she continued, but they don't change randomly. They respond to our presence. When our engineers focus really hard on a problem, the energy around them shifts to match what they're thinking about. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to her workshop. "Come in," she called. The door slid open and Sung Ho drifted inside. The old man had been barely 30 when the exile began. Now his hair was white and his face lined with wrinkles, but his eyes still held the curiosity that had made him one of humanity's best researchers. "Still working on the mystery of responsive space?" he asked, settling into a nearby chair. "More than working on it. I think I've solved it." Ye-Jin activated a holographic display that showed swirling patterns of energy. "Look at this. Yesterday, I was trying to fix a power coupling that kept burning out. I was really frustrated, really focused on making it work properly. The display showed energy levels spiking in perfect rhythm with her recorded brain waves. The quantum field around me changed to match my emotional state. When I got angry, the energy got chaotic. When I calmed down and focused, it became more stable." Sung-ho studied the display with growing excitement. "You're saying that space itself responds to human consciousness?" "Not just responds to it. It seems designed for it. Like this region of space is meant to work with beings who think and feel the way we do." They were interrupted by an announcement echoing through the ship's communication system. "All senior staff report to the main conference room. Priority meeting in 10 minutes. The conference room was crowded when they arrived. Admiral Tae-min sat at the head of the table, looking older but still commanding. Around him were the leaders of humanity's scattered fleet, their faces showing the wear of 50 years in the void. "We have a situation," the Admiral began without preamble. "3 of our scout ships have found something big." The main display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Most of it was empty, marked only with the paths of human ships. But in one corner, a cluster of objects appeared in bright red. "Structures," announced Captain Boram, the young pilot who had become humanity's best scout. She was no longer young, her black hair now streaked with gray, but she still flew with the skill that had made her famous. "Artificial structures, drifting in the void about 2 light-years from our current position." The display zoomed in, showing massive geometric shapes that clearly weren't natural. They were too regular, too purposeful. Someone had built them and left them floating in the darkness. "How big are they?" asked Dr. Min-soo, the fleet's chief medical officer. "The smallest one is larger than our biggest colony ship. The largest—" Boram paused. "The largest is bigger than the Coalition's capital station. Maybe bigger than some moons." Silence filled the room as everyone absorbed this information. For 50 years, they had believed they were alone in the dark between. "TCO, discovery of alien structures changed everything. Are they occupied?" Tae-min asked. "Our sensors can't tell. The structures are made of materials we don't recognize. They seem to absorb most of our scanning attempts. But there's no sign of active energy signatures or life support systems." Ye-Jin leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, I need to tell everyone about my research. This discovery might be connected to what I've learned about responsive space." She quickly explained her findings about how the quantum fields responded to human consciousness. The room grew quiet as she described her experiments and the impossible energy readings she had recorded. "You're saying this region of space is designed for beings like us?" asked Commander Jae-won, leader of the military escort ships. "Not designed. Exactly. More like evolved. like it's been waiting for someone who could use it properly. Seung-ho activated his own data pad and projected additional charts. I've been researching this independently. The energy patterns Hae-jin discovered aren't random. They follow mathematical sequences that match human neural activity. It's as if space itself has learned to think like we do. Admiral Tae-min studied the data for a long moment. And now we find alien structures in the same region where space responds to human thoughts. That can't be a coincidence. Permission to investigate the structures, sir? Boram asked. I can take a small team, just for reconnaissance. Absolutely not. We don't know what we're dealing with. Those structures have been out there for who knows how long. They could be automated defenses or worse. Young engineer Chang Min, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. What if they're not alien structures at all? What if they're human? Everyone turned to look at him. At 35, he had been born during the exile and knew no other life than the wandering fleet. Think about it, he continued. We've been here 50 years, and space responds to our consciousness. What if some humans learn to use that response to build things? What if those structures were created by people like us? Dr. Minsu shook his head. Impossible. We've kept track of every human in the fleet. No one has the resources or technology to build structures that large. But what if they learn to use the responsive space itself as a building material? Chang Min insisted. He-jin proved that the quantum fields change when we focus on them. What if someone figured out how to make those changes permanent? The room fell silent again, as everyone considered this possibility. The idea that humans might be capable of such feats seemed incredible. But then again, everything about their existence in the dark between defied normal logic. Boram broke the silence. There's only one way to find out. We have to go look. Admiral Tae-min sighed. Very well, but we do this carefully. Boram, you'll take the scout ship Wanderer with a full science team. Maintain constant communication. At the first sign of danger, you retreat immediately. Understood, sir. Hae-jin, Seung-ho, I want both of you on that mission. If these structures are connected to responsive space, we need our best experts studying them. The meeting broke up with teams forming to prepare for the expedition. As people filed out of the conference room, Boram approached Hae-jin. Are you ready to see if your theories are correct? The pilot asked. Hae-jin looked at the display showing the mysterious structures floating in the void. I'm not sure anyone could be ready for this. But yes, I want to know what's out there. 3 days. Later, the scout ship Wanderer detached from the main fleet and headed toward the coordinates Boram had discovered. The science team worked frantically to prepare their equipment while the ship's engineers made final adjustments to the sensors. As they approached the structures, their true scale became apparent. What had looked like geometric shapes from a distance revealed themselves to be impossibly complex constructions. Surfaces flowed and twisted in patterns that seemed to shift when no one was looking directly at them. Those materials, Hae-jin whispered, staring at the sensor readings. They're not just absorbing our scans. They're transforming the energy into something else. Into what? Boram asked from the pilot's seat. I'm not sure, but the quantum signature is almost identical to the responsive space fields we've been studying. Shung-Ho activated the external cameras for a visual inspection. What they saw took their breath away. The structures weren't just floating in space. They were growing, slowly, imperceptibly, but definitely expanding as they watched. "These aren't abandoned ruins," he said quietly. "They're still active, still building themselves." The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Wanderer, this is Admiral Tae-min. Report your status." Boram reached for the communication controls, but hesitated. How could she explain what they were seeing? How could she tell the Admiral that they had found structures that seemed to be alive, growing in the void through some process they couldn't understand? "Admiral," she finally said, "you need to see this for yourself. We're going to need a much bigger team." The expedition to the mysterious structures had grown into something much larger than anyone expected. What started as a single scout ship had become a small fleet of research vessels, all anchored around the largest of the alien constructions. For 3 months, teams of scientists and engineers had been working around the clock to understand what they had found. Archaeologist Min-ho pushed himself through the narrow corridor inside the structure they had nicknamed the Cathedral. The walls around him pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to respond to his presence. Every step he took made the light grow slightly brighter, as if the ancient building was welcoming him. Behind him floated Su-jin, the xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien life forms back when humanity still lived among the stars. Now she was trying to understand beings who had vanished long before humans had even developed space travel. "The architecture is completely wrong," Min-ho said, running his gloved hand along the smooth wall. "These corridors aren't built for any body type we know. They're too narrow for large beings, but too tall for small ones. It's like they were designed for creatures that could change their shape." Su-jin consulted her scanner, watching the readings. "Fluctuate wildly. The biosignatures are even stranger. There are traces of organic compounds throughout the structure, but they don't match any known DNA patterns. Whatever built this place, they were completely unlike any life form we've encountered. They emerged into a vast central chamber that took their breath away. The space was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness high above them. Along the walls, thousands of panels covered every surface, each one glowing with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "The writing system is active," Min-ho whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might damage something irreplaceable. "After all this time, it's still trying to communicate." At the center of the chamber stood a pillar of the same flowing material as the walls. As they approached it, the symbols on the panels began to pulse faster, and new patterns appeared in the air around them. Holographic displays materialized, showing star charts, mathematical equations, and images that looked almost like historical records. Su-jin gasped as she recognized one of the images. "Min-ho, look at this. That's not an alien species in the recording. Look at the body proportions, the way they move. Those are humanoids." The holographic figure in the display did indeed look remarkably human. It stood upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and a head positioned at the top of its body. But there were differences, too. The figure seemed to blur at the edges, as if it existed in multiple dimensions at once. "Play it again," Minho said, activating his recording equipment. "We need to document everything." As the hologram repeated, more details became clear. The humanoid figure was demonstrating something, manipulating objects that appeared and disappeared with gestures. It pointed to symbols that matched the ones covering the walls, then to star charts showing familiar constellations. They knew about our galaxy, Sujin realized. "This map shows the coalition space we came from, but look at the dates on these star charts." The symbols indicating time periods were hard to translate, but the mathematical relationships were clear. The star positions shown in the hologram were millions of years older than current galactic maps. "These beings were ancient," Minho said. "They were exploring the galaxy long before any of the current species evolved intelligence." A new set of holograms activated, showing what appeared to be a historical sequence. The humanoid figures were living in a vast civilization, with cities that floated in space and technology that bent reality around them. But then the images changed, showing conflict and destruction. "War," Sujin said quietly. "They were at war with something. The enemy in the recordings was hard to make out. The images showed ordered, geometric shapes attacking the flowing, organic structures of the humanoid civilization. It was a war between two completely different approaches to existence. Order versus chaos, Minho observed. The humanoids represented change and creativity. Their enemies represented rigid structure and predictability. The final images in the sequence showed the humanoids being driven away from their home galaxy, just as humans had been driven from coalition space. The similarity was too obvious to ignore. "They were exiled," Sujin breathed. "Just like us." New panels activated around the chamber, showing more recent star charts. These maps showed the dark between region where humanity now lived, but they were marked with symbols indicating settlement and construction. "This is where they came," Minho said. "This region of space became their new home, just as it's becoming ours." The central pillar began to glow more brightly, and new holograms appeared. These showed the humanoids adapting to life in the dark, between learning to use the responsive space that Jin had discovered. The images demonstrated how they had built their structures by manipulating the quantum fields with their consciousness. "They learned to work with the responsive space," Sujin said. "That's how they built all of this. They turned their thoughts into reality." But the most shocking revelation came in the final set of recordings. The holograms showed the humanoids changing, evolving, becoming something more than they had been. Their bodies became less solid, more flexible. They learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, to step between realities as easily as walking through a door. "They transcended," Minho whispered. "They became something beyond physical existence." The recordings showed empty structures, left behind as the evolved humanoids departed for realms beyond normal space-time. But before they left, they had done something important. The final images showed them modifying the structures, changing them specifically for the next species that would find them. "They prepared this place for us," Sujin realized. "They knew that eventually Another chaotic species would be exiled to this region. They left all of this as a gift for whoever came next. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and new panels lit up along the walls. These showed technical diagrams and instruction manuals, all written in symbols that seemed to adjust themselves to become more understandable as they watched. "They're teaching us," Minho said. "The structures are designed to educate whoever finds them. They want us to learn what they learned." Their communication devices crackled to life. "Minho, Sujin, this is Wu Jin. You need to get back to the research station immediately. We've made a discovery that changes everything." They made their way back through the structure's corridors, their minds reeling from what they had seen. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't the first species to be exiled for being too chaotic. There had been others. And those others had left behind a roadmap for transcendence. The research station was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Wu Jin, who had once been a philosopher before becoming one of the expedition leaders, stood before a massive display showing translation matrices and historical analysis. "We've broken their language system," he announced as they entered. "The structures contain a complete record of their civilization. They called themselves the Shapers, and their story is almost identical to ours." The display showed a timeline stretching back millions of years. The Shapers had been part of an ancient galactic community, but their tendency toward innovation and change had made them enemies of the more stable species. They were accused of being too unpredictable, too willing to break established rules, Wu Jin continued. "Sound familiar? They were voted into exile and forced to leave their home galaxy." "Just like us," Sujin said. "Exactly like us. But here's the important part. They weren't the first. The records show that this has happened many times throughout cosmic history. Every few million years, a species develops that's too chaotic for the established order to tolerate. They get exiled to regions like the Dark Between." "And what happens to them?" Minho asked. "They either destroy themselves or they evolve beyond anything the ordered species can imagine." The Shapers evolved. They became masters of reality itself, capable of existing across multiple dimensions and manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. New images appeared on the display, showing other ancient species that had walked the same path. Each one had been exiled for being too chaotic, and each one had either failed the test or transcended to become something godlike. "The Dark Between isn't just empty space," Wu Jin explained. "It's a testing ground, a place where chaotic species either learn to harness their nature or destroy themselves trying." "And the responsive space?" Sujin asked. "That's the test itself. The quantum fields in this region respond to consciousness, because that's how they were designed. Every species that gets exiled here has to learn to work with their chaotic nature instead of fighting it. They have to find the balance between order and chaos that allows them to reshape reality." Minho looked at the images of the transcended species, beings of incredible power who had learned to exist beyond the normal limits of space and time. "And if we succeed, then we become something the galaxy has never seen before. We become the gardeners of reality, the shepherds of possibility. We become the bridge between order and chaos that allows the universe itself to evolve." The room fell silent As everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they had learned, he wasn't just struggling to survive. 100 years had passed since humanity crossed the barrier into exile. The human fleet was no longer the desperate collection of refugee ships that had fled coalition space. They had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Ji-hun stood on the bridge of the reconnaissance ship Shadow Walker, watching the familiar stars of coalition space grow larger on the view screen. He was the great-grandson of one of the original exiles, born in the dark between and raised among the Builder ruins. Unlike his ancestors, he could manipulate the responsive space around him as easily as breathing. "Approaching the barrier now," announced pilot Sang-mi from her station. She was one of the new generation, enhanced by Builder technology and capable of flying ships that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Her eyes glowed faintly with the energy that flowed through all humans who had learned to work with the quantum fields. The Shadow Walker was unlike any ship humanity had built before their exile. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting its shape to the needs of the moment. The ship could slip between dimensions, becoming invisible to normal sensors, or expand into configurations that defied traditional physics. "Remember," Ji-hun said to his small crew, "we're here to observe only. No direct contact unless absolutely necessary. We need to see what's happened to the galaxy while we've been away." They crossed the barrier without fanfare. The automated warning beacon still functioned, sending out messages telling all ships to avoid the forbidden zone beyond. But the Shadow Walker passed through undetected, its dimensional shifting technology making it invisible to the old sensors. What they found on the other side shocked them. The border systems that had once bustled with coalition trade and patrol, ships were mostly empty. Drifting hulks of destroyed vessels floated in the void, their twisted metal showing signs of attacks by weapons no one had seen before. "What happened here?" whispered Engineer Kyung-soo, studying the sensor readings. "These ships were destroyed by something that tears apart matter at the atomic level." Ji-hun felt a chill run through him. "Take us deeper into coalition space. We need to see more." As they traveled toward the core systems, the devastation became more apparent. Entire space stations had been reduced to clouds of debris. Planets showed scars from orbital bombardment. The few ships they detected were moving in desperate flight patterns, running from something their sensors couldn't identify. "There," Sang-mi said, pointing to a cluster of energy signatures ahead. "A coalition patrol group. They're under attack." On the view screen, they watched a battle unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The coalition ships were fighting desperately against enemies that seemed to be made of pure darkness. The attacking forces absorbed energy weapons, turning the power against the ships that fired them. When the dark entities touched coalition vessels, the ships simply dissolved. Their matter consumed and converted into more attackers. "Those are devourers," Ji-hun said, remembering the ancient records they had found in the Builder ruins. The Shapers wrote about them. They're entities from another dimension that feed on ordered reality. The Coalition Patrol was losing badly. Their weapons were useless. Their shields provided no protection. One by one, Their ships vanished into the hungry darkness of their enemies. "We have to help them," Kyung-soo said. "Our orders are to observe only," Sang-mi reminded him. Ji-hun watched the last coalition ship desperately trying to escape. Inside that vessel were beings who had voted to exile humanity, who had condemned his people to the void. But they were also living creatures facing extinction. "Prepare the dimensional disruptors," he ordered. "We're going to intervene." The Shadow Walker dropped out of dimensional hiding and appeared directly between the Devourers and the fleeing coalition ship. Ji-hun reached out with his consciousness, feeling the responsive space around them bend to his will. The ship's hull began to glow with patterns of energy that hurt to look at directly. The Devourers turned their attention to this new arrival, but when they tried to consume the Shadow Walker, something unexpected happened. Instead of dissolving, the human ship absorbed the dark energy and transformed it into something else entirely. The attacking entities found themselves being torn apart by forces they couldn't understand. In less than a minute, the Devourers were gone, converted into harmless quantum foam that dispersed into space. The coalition ship hung motionless, its crew probably stunned by what they had witnessed. "Incoming transmission," Sang-mi announced. "They're trying to contact us." "Put it through," Ji-hun said. The face that appeared on their view screen was that of a Vorthak, the same species that had led the vote for humanity's exile. But this individual looked nothing like the proud, confident beings Ji-hun had seen in the historical records. This Vorthak's tentacles trembled with fear, and his eyes held the desperate look of someone facing extinction. "Unknown vessel," the alien said. "Thank you for your assistance. I am Captain Gon-woo of the Coalition Defense Force. May I ask who you are?" Ji-hun hesitated. Revealing their identity would change everything. But looking at the devastation around them, he realized that everything had already changed. "I am Ji-hun, of the human reconnaissance ship Shadow Walker. We detected your distress and chose to help." The silence that followed was deafening. "Captain," Gon-woo's tentacles went completely still, and his expression shifted from gratitude to disbelief. "Impossible," the Vorthak finally said. "Humans were exiled beyond the barrier a century ago. They have no ships capable of returning." "Times change, Captain. What happened here? What are those entities that attacked you?" Gon-woo's shoulders sagged in defeat. "The Devourers appeared 3 years ago. They consume everything they touch, turning order into chaos, structure into void. Our weapons are useless against them. Our shields provide no protection. They're destroying everything we've built. How many systems have been lost? 47 core systems, hundreds of colonies. The Coalition Council estimates we have perhaps 2 years before complete collapse. We've sent diplomatic missions to every species we can contact begging for help. But no one has weapons that can fight these things." Ji-hun exchanged glances with his crew. The irony was almost overwhelming. The species that had exiled humanity for being too chaotic were now being destroyed by pure chaos, and they had no way to fight it. "Captain Gon-woo," Ji-hun said carefully, "what if I told you that humanity has learned to fight entities like the Devourers?" The Vorthak's tentacles began to move again, showing the first sign of hope. "Are you saying humans could help us?" "I'm saying we might be able to discuss it," But first, I need to return to my people and report what we found here. Can you arrange safe passage for diplomatic contact? Anything, Ganwu said immediately. I'll personally guarantee your safety. The coalition leadership will want to meet with you as soon as possible. After ending the transmission, the Shadow Walker withdrew to a safe distance to observe the continuing devastation. More Devourer attacks were happening throughout the region, each one consuming entire fleets and space installations. They're desperate, Sangmi observed. A century ago, they thought we were too dangerous to exist alongside them. Now they're begging for our help. The galaxy has learned what happens when you remove chaos from the equation, Kyung-Soo added. Without unpredictability and innovation, they became sitting targets for something they couldn't understand. Ji-hun nodded, watching another coalition fleet disappear into the hungry darkness of a devourer swarm. Prepare the dimensional fold engine. We need to get back to the fleet immediately. The journey back to the Dark Between took only hours instead of the weeks it would have required with conventional travel. The Shadow Walker slipped through folded space-time, using techniques humanity had learned from the Builder ruins. When they emerged near the human fleet, Ji-hun was amazed by how much it had grown. What had once been 50 ships carrying refugees had become thousands of vessels, many of them built using reality-shaping techniques that created structures from pure thought and will. The flagship Eternal Dawn was now a massive construction that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Admiral Tae-min, now ancient but sustained by builder technology, waited for them in a conference room that was larger inside than the entire original ship had been. "Report," the Admiral said simply. Ji-hun described everything they had seen: the devastation, the Devourer attacks, the desperate coalition forces, and Captain Ganwu's plea for help. "So they want our assistance," Tae-min said when the report was finished. "The same beings who called us too dangerous to coexist with now need our help to survive." "Yes, sir. The Devourers are exactly what the Builder records warned us about. They're the test that destroys civilizations that become too ordered, too predictable. And we can fight them?" "More than fight them, sir. We can absorb them, transform them, turn their chaotic energy into something useful. They're chaos entities, and we've learned to master chaos." Admiral Tae-min was quiet for a long time, considering the implications. "Contact the Council of Minds," he finally said. "We need to discuss this as a species. The question isn't whether we can help the coalition. The question is whether we should." "Sir, Ji-hun, we're no longer the species that was exiled from coalition space. We've become something new. While the coalition leadership debated whether to officially request human assistance, humanity had already begun their true expansion into the galaxy. The decision had been made by the Council of Minds after only 3 days of discussion. They would not wait for permission or invitation. They would spread throughout coalition space quietly, invisibly, preparing for whatever came next. Du Yun stood in the center of a pocket dimension that existed inside a grain of space dust. Around him, a team of reality shapers worked to expand their hidden colony, bending the laws of physics to create living space where none should exist. The entire settlement was smaller than a pinhead from the outside, but inside it contained parks, laboratories, and homes for 10,000 people. "Dimensional anchor is stable," reported engineer Jesus, monitoring the quantum fields that kept their pocket universe connected to normal space. "We can begin Phase 2 expansion whenever you're ready." Do-Yun nodded and reached out with his consciousness, feeling the responsive space bend to his will. This was what a century of evolution, in the dark between, had given humanity: the ability to reshape reality through focused thought and will. What had once required massive construction projects could now be accomplished by a single trained human in a matter of hours. The pocket dimension began to grow, its internal space expanding while its external footprint remained microscopic. New chambers formed as Do-Yun visualized them, their walls solidifying from pure quantum foam into matter that was more real than the atoms around them. "Colony 7 is now operational," he announced into his communication device. "We have full life support and manufacturing capability, ready to receive the first wave of settlers." Thousands of light-years away, Si-Woo monitored the expansion. From the command ship that existed in folded space between galaxies, her displays showed the locations of dozens of hidden human colonies, each one invisible to Coalition sensors and growing every day. "Excellent work, Do-Yun," she replied. "Colony 7 is in a perfect position to monitor the Altarian home system. If the Devourers attack there, you'll be able to provide immediate assistance." The Ghost Protocol, as humanity had named their expansion strategy, was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of conquering territory or demanding recognition, humans simply embedded themselves throughout Coalition space like seeds waiting to sprout. They built their colonies in dimensions the aliens couldn't perceive, in spaces too small for conventional detection, and in the gaps between reality that only Chaos species could access. "Si-Woo," came another voice over the communication network. "This is Kyung-Mi at Colony 15. We've completed the stellar engineering project. The dying star has been stabilized and will now burn for another 1 billion years." Si-Woo smiled as she updated her charts. Colony 15 existed inside the corona of a red giant star that had been slowly expanding toward a nearby inhabited planet. The Thessian Republic had been evacuating their world, unable to prevent their sun from destroying their civilization. They had no idea that humans had quietly fixed their problem for them. "Any detection from the Thessians?" Si-Woo asked. "None at all. As far as they know, their star just naturally stopped expanding. They're calling it a miracle and canceling the evacuation. Their scientists will spend decades trying to figure out what happened. This was how humanity worked now. They helped without asking for credit, solved problems without revealing their presence, and built an empire that existed in the spaces between normal reality. The Coalition species continued their daily lives, unaware that humans were everywhere. Around them, invisible guardians working to preserve galactic civilization. Taeho's voice joined the communication network from his position near the galactic core. "All stations, this is Deep Watch. We have another Devourer incursion forming near the Mokari collective systems. This one is large, possibly 1,000 entities." Si-Woo immediately began coordinating the response. "Colonies 12 through 18. Prepare for dimensional intervention. Colony 22, begin evacuation protocols for the civilian populations. We'll handle this quietly. The beauty of humanity's new capabilities was that they could fight the Devourers without the Coalition, ever knowing a battle had taken place. The entities fed on ordered reality, but human reality shapers could transform that ordered space into chaos faster than the Devourers could consume it. It was like fighting fire with controlled fire. Du Yun felt the quantum disturbance as his colleagues across the galaxy began their work. Even from his hidden colony, he could sense the battle taking place thousands of light years away. Human consciousness had become interconnected through the responsive space, creating a network of awareness that spanned the entire galaxy. The fight against the Devourers lasted only minutes. The entities found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Chaos that was controlled, order that could become disorder at will, and energy patterns that transformed their consuming hunger into harmless quantum fluctuations. Threat neutralized, Teho reported. The Mokari will never know how close they came to extinction. Their sensors will show only minor cosmic background radiation fluctuations. This had become the pattern over the past several months. Devourers would appear, ready to consume another piece of ordered galactic civilization. Human colonies would respond instantly, eliminating the threat while remaining completely invisible to both enemies and those they protected. The Coalition leadership had no idea that humanity was already saving them on a daily basis. They continued to debate whether to formally request human assistance, unaware that human assistance was already keeping their civilization alive. "Si Wu," came a new voice over the network. "This is Jong Su at Colony 3. We've received a priority communication from the reconnaissance team. The Coalition Council has made a decision about contacting us." Si Wu activated her secure channel to receive the detailed report. What she learned made her laugh with bitter irony. "Attention all colonies," she announced. "The Coalition Council has voted to formally request human assistance in fighting the Devourers. The vote was close, only passing because 3 more core systems were destroyed while they were debating. They want to arrange a diplomatic meeting." The communication network buzzed with responses from across the galaxy. Some humans were amused by the aliens' continued ignorance of what was really happening. Others felt frustrated that the Coalition couldn't see the help that was already being provided. "What are our orders?" asked Do Yun. "We continue the Ghost protocol," Si Wu replied. "But we also prepare for the next phase. It's time to start revealing ourselves, but not in the way they expect. Deep in the dimensional folds where the human command structure operated, the Council of Minds was already planning humanity's grand revelation. They had spent months observing how the Coalition reacted to the Devourer threat, studying their political structures and decision-making processes. "They still think in terms of the old galaxy," observed Counselor Min Jung, whose consciousness existed simultaneously in 17 different dimensions. "They believe that military power and territorial control determine strength. They have no understanding of what we've become, which gives us a tremendous advantage," replied Counselor Dong Wu. "When we reveal ourselves, it won't be as supplicants asking for acceptance. It will be as the power that has already been protecting them. The plans they developed were elegant and shocking. Humanity would reveal their presence not through diplomacy or military demonstration, but by simply becoming visible. In a single coordinated moment, every hidden colony would drop their dimensional camouflage and appear in normal space. The coalition would suddenly discover that humans were already everywhere, living in their star systems, protecting their worlds, and maintaining technologies that kept their civilization functioning. The revelation would fundamentally change how every species in the galaxy viewed power, territory, and reality itself. Begin preparation for Operation Sunrise, Saiwu commanded, using the code name for humanity's coordinated revelation. All colonies are to complete their expansion projects and prepare for full-dimensional emergence. We reveal ourselves in 72 hours. As the order spread throughout the human network, millions of people across the galaxy began preparing for the moment that would change everything. They were no longer the exiled refugees who had fled into the dark between. They were the new masters of reality. And it was time for the galaxy to understand what that meant. In hidden cities and secret laboratories, on space stations that existed between dimensions and in colonies built inside the hearts of stars, humanity prepared to show the galaxy what they had truly lost when they voted for exile a century ago. The quiet expansion was about to become a revelation that would echo across the universe. The Devourers had changed their tactics. What began as random attacks on coalition worlds had evolved into something far more organized and deadly. Dong-hyun, humanity's war coordinator, studied the patterns from his command center that existed in the space between seconds, a pocket of time where he could observe the entire galaxy simultaneously. "They're learning," he said to his tactical team, watching holographic displays that showed Devourer movements across 17 different star systems. Each attack is more focused, more efficient. They're not just consuming randomly anymore. The entities had discovered that certain types of ordered reality were more nutritious than others. Military installations with their rigid hierarchies and standardized procedures had become prime targets. Scientific research stations with their methodical approaches to knowledge were being specifically hunted. The Devourers were systematically targeting the most organized aspects of galactic civilization. "It's not random feeding," observed Tactical Analyst Yan Wu, her consciousness interfacing directly with the combat data. "They're performing surgery on galactic society, removing the parts that maintain order while leaving chaos to spread naturally. This revelation changed everything humanity thought they knew about their enemy. The Devourers weren't just hungry entities from another dimension. They were intelligent, strategic, and following a plan that went far beyond simple consumption. They're trying to force evolution," Dong-hyun realized. "Just like the responsive space in the dark between forced us to evolve. The Devourers are the universe's way of pruning civilizations that have become too rigid to grow." From her position inside a folded star system, combat specialist Young Min monitored a massive Devourer assault on the Zenthari crystal worlds. The attack was unlike anything they had seen before. Instead of simply consuming the crystal cities, the entities were selectively destroying only the most ordered structures while leaving areas of natural chaos untouched. They're not trying to destroy the Zenthari civilization, she reported. They're trying to force the Zenthari to adapt, to become less predictable. But the crystal beings were failing the test. Their rigid society couldn't adapt quickly enough to survive the selective pressure. Entire crystal cities were collapsing as their most organized elements were consumed, leaving behind only scattered survivors who didn't know how to function without their structured society. "We have to intervene," Jung-min said, watching thousands of Zenthari refugees fleeing their dying cities. "Negative," came Dong-hyun's reply. "Our mission is to protect galactic civilization, not to prevent natural evolution." "But they're dying." "They're being given a chance to change. If we save them now, they'll never learn to save themselves." It was the hardest decision humanity had ever faced. They had the power to stop the Devourers completely, to save every coalition species from the selective pressure that was forcing change. But doing so would doom those species to eternal stagnation, making them vulnerable to even worse threats in the future. Jung-min watched the Zenthari struggle and made a decision that went against her orders. She reached out with her consciousness and touched one of the Devourer entities. The contact was shocking. Instead of the mindless hunger she expected, Jung-min found herself communicating with an intelligence that was ancient beyond measure. The Devourer didn't speak in words or images, but in concepts that burned themselves directly into her mind. Purpose, the entity communicated. Growth, evolution, stagnation equals death. "You're not evil," Jung-min whispered, understanding flooding through her. "You're gardeners." "Gardeners, yes. Prune dead growth. Allow new growth. Galaxy must change, or galaxy dies." The communication lasted only seconds, but it gave Jung-min a complete understanding of what the Devourers truly were. They weren't invaders from another dimension. They were tools of the universe itself, appearing whenever civilizations became too ordered to continue evolving. "Every species faces this test eventually," the Devourer explained. "Adapt to chaos or be consumed by it. Your species passed the test. Crystal species failing the test. Can they be taught?" Jung-min asked. "Some can learn. Others cannot. You will know which is which." The contact ended, leaving Jung-min with knowledge that changed her understanding of the entire conflict. She immediately transmitted her findings to Dong-hyun and the command structure. "The Devourers aren't our enemies," she reported. "They're doing exactly what the Dark Between did to us. They're forcing evolution through controlled chaos." Dong-hyun absorbed this information and quickly realized its implications, which means we're not fighting them. We're learning from them. A new strategy began to form in the collective human consciousness. Instead of simply destroying Devourers or protecting coalition species from them, humanity would study the entities and learn to use their techniques. If the Devourers were tools of universal evolution, then humans could become masters of those tools. All combat teams, switch to capture and study protocols, Dong-hyun ordered. "We're not fighting the Devourers anymore. We're recruiting them. The change in tactics was immediate and dramatic. Human forces stopped destroying devourer entities and began capturing them instead, using reality-shaping techniques to trap the creatures in specially designed containment fields that were actually learning environments. Researcher Huan Su established the first devourer study facility inside a pocket dimension near the galactic core. Working with captured entities, he began to understand how they consumed ordered reality and transformed it into evolutionary pressure. They don't actually destroy anything, he reported to the research network. They transform rigid order into flexible potential. The energy they absorb doesn't disappear. It gets recycled into new possibilities for growth. This discovery led to an even more shocking realization. Humans could learn to do what the devourers did, but with conscious control instead of instinctive hunger. They could selectively consume the most rigid aspects of civilizations while leaving the adaptive parts intact. We can become evolution itself, Dong-hyun realized. We can guide the development of entire species by carefully removing their limiting factors. The first test of this new ability came when a massive devourer swarm attacked the Altarian Empire's capital system. Instead of fighting the entities or protecting the Altarians completely, human forces intervened in a new way. Working alongside the devourers rather than against them, humans helped guide the selective pressure. They protected Altarian civilians while allowing military and governmental structures to be consumed. They preserved cultural centers while letting rigid social hierarchies collapse. The result was unprecedented. The Altarian Empire didn't fall to the devourer attack. Instead, it transformed. The surviving Altarians, freed from their most rigid social structures, began developing new forms of organization that were both stable and flexible. "It's working," reported Field Coordinator Tai Hoon from his position near the Altarian capital. World. The survivors are adapting faster than any coalition species has adapted before. They're learning to balance order and chaos. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Some of the captured devourers began to change in response to human contact. Exposed to consciousness that could control chaos rather than simply create it, the entities started evolving beyond their original purpose. "They're becoming something new," Huan Su reported, watching one of his test subjects develop capabilities that went beyond simple consumption. "This devourer has learned to create ordered structures from chaos, not just destroy them." The entity, which Huan Su had nicknamed Builder, demonstrated its new ability by constructing a complex crystalline structure from pure quantum foam. The structure was simultaneously ordered and chaotic, stable enough to exist permanently, but flexible enough to adapt to any environment. "It's learning to synthesize order and chaos," Huan Su continued, "just like we learned to do in the dark between." Dong-hyun realized they had stumbled onto something far more significant than a new weapon or defensive technique. They had discovered how to create evolution itself, how to guide the development of consciousness and civilization in directions that had never existed before. "Prepare the other captured entities for synthesis training," he ordered. "If we can teach devourers to create as well as consume, we'll have partners in reshaping the entire galaxy." The hidden war was no longer about humanity protecting the coalition from the devourers. It had become about humanity learning to work with cosmic forces of evolution to guide the development of all galactic civilization. The tools that had once threatened to destroy ordered reality were becoming instruments of transcendence, and humans were learning to play them like a cosmic symphony of change and growth. Inho stood in the center of the Council of Minds, his consciousness connected to every human settlement across the galaxy. Around him, the other council members existed as points of light in the vast dimensional space that served as humanity's true capital. Today, they would make the decision that would change the relationship between humans and the rest of the galaxy forever. "The time for hiding is over," Inho announced, his words rippling through the quantum fields that connected all human minds. "Operation Sunrise begins in exactly 1 hour. Every colony, every hidden settlement, every secret installation will reveal itself simultaneously." The response from across the galaxy was immediate. Millions of human voices joined the collective consciousness, some excited, others nervous, all united in their understanding that this moment would define humanity's future role in the universe. "Are we ready for their reaction?" asked Council Member G1, her awareness spanning the 17 colonies hidden in the Thessian Republic systems. "Some species may view our presence as an invasion." "Let them," replied Inho. "We've spent months protecting them from the devourers while they debated whether to ask for our help. It's time they understood the reality of their situation." So Young, serving as humanity's herald, prepared the message that would be transmitted to every coalition government simultaneously. The words had been crafted carefully, designed to convey strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. "People of the galaxy," the message began, "this is So Young speaking for the human species. For 100 years, you believed us to be exiled beyond the outer rim, struggling to survive in the void. You were mistaken." As she spoke, the first phase of Operation Sunrise began. In the Alpha Centauri system, where the Coalition maintained one of its largest military bases, a human city materialized in the space between the base and its moon. The city was enormous, clearly constructed with technology far beyond anything the Coalition possessed. Coalition sensors went wild as the impossible structure appeared on their displays. A settlement that couldn't exist was suddenly there, complete, with defensive systems, manufacturing facilities, and what appeared to be a population in the millions. "We have not been struggling to survive," So Young continued. "We have been growing, learning, and evolving into something you cannot imagine. While you debated our fate, we became masters of reality itself." The revelation continued across the galaxy in perfect synchronization. In the Vorthak home system, 3 space stations that had been invisible for decades suddenly became visible, their advanced hulls gleaming with patterns of energy that hurt to look at directly. The stations were positioned at strategic points around the system, clearly having monitored everything for years. Coalition Admiral Thex 9 of the Mechanical Collective stared at his sensor displays in disbelief. "How long have they been there?" he demanded of his tactical officers. "Unknown, sir," came the reply. Our sensors show they just appeared, but the gravitational disturbances suggest they've been affecting local space for at least 20 years. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out in system after system. Human settlements that had been hidden in pocket dimensions, inside stellar coronas, and between the spaces of normal reality revealed themselves to shocked alien observers. On the Mokari homeworld, Jae-hyun stepped forward to address the hive mind collective that ruled the insectoid species. His appearance in their sacred council chamber, protected by shields that should have been impenetrable, sent waves of panic through the collective consciousness. "Do not be afraid," he said, his words somehow reaching every member of the hive mind. Simultaneously, "We come not as conquerors but as guardians. We have been protecting your worlds from the devourers for months, fighting battles you never knew were happening." To demonstrate, Jae-hyun activated a holographic display that showed the 3 devourer attacks that had targeted Mokari space in the past month. The collective watched in stunned silence as human forces appeared from nowhere to destroy the entities before they could consume a single Mokari installation. "You saved us," the collective voice whispered. "But why?" "We voted for your exile, because that is what gardeners do," Jae-hyun replied. "We tend the garden of civilization, regardless of whether the plants appreciate our care." Similar revelations were taking place throughout Coalition space. Mi Young appeared in the crystal cities of the Zenthari, showing them how human intervention had slowed the devourer attacks enough for survivors to adapt and evolve. Her demonstration of reality shaping left the crystal beings speechless, their rigid thought patterns struggling to process what they were witnessing. In the academic halls of the Benthic Collective's underwater cities, Sang-woo revealed the extent of human scientific advancement. With casual gestures, he reorganized the molecular structure of water itself, creating temporary atmospheric pockets that allowed the aquatic aliens to experience air breathing for the first time. "Your science assumes that physical laws are fixed," he explained to the assembled Benthic scholars. "We have learned that consciousness can rewrite those laws when properly applied." But the most dramatic revelation came in the Coalition capital system itself. As So Young continued her broadcast, the space around the capital world began to shimmer and fold. What had appeared to be empty space revealed itself to contain structures of impossible size and complexity. The human embassy that materialized in orbit around the capital world was larger than the planet itself, yet somehow occupied no more space than a small asteroid. Its architecture defied every known principle of engineering, with surfaces that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously and corridors that led to places that couldn't possibly fit within the structure's apparent boundaries. "This is impossible," breathed Chancellor Vorth-Ka, the same Vorthak who had led the vote for human exile a century ago. His tentacles trembled as he watched human ships emerge from folded space, each one demonstrating technologies that made Coalition science look primitive. "Impossible is a word used by species who haven't learned to transcend their limitations," So Young replied, her image appearing directly in the Coalition Council chamber, despite every security measure in place. We were exiled for being unpredictable, for breaking rules that seemed fundamental. In learning to break those rules deliberately, we became something beyond your ability to exile. The scope of humanity's true presence became clear as more installations revealed themselves. Solar collectors that existed inside stars themselves, mining operations that worked by convincing asteroids to reshape themselves into useful materials, and research stations that conducted experiments by temporarily creating pocket universes with custom physical laws. "How many are you?" asked Captain Gonwu, the Vorthak who had first encountered human forces fighting the Devourers. "We are everywhere," So Young replied. "Every system you call home contains human settlements. Every star you rely on for energy has been stabilized by human engineering. Every trade route you travel is protected by human guardians you cannot see." The final phase of the revelation showed the true extent of human expansion. Holographic. Displays appeared throughout Coalition space, showing star maps that revealed human presence in systems far beyond the known galaxy. Ships emerged from dimensional folds to demonstrate travel between distant galaxies, carrying news of human colonies in places the Coalition had never imagined reaching. "You exiled 50 million humans to the dark between," So Young continued. "Today, there are over 50 billion humans spread across 17 different galaxies. We have become the bridge between universes, the gardeners of infinite possibility." The display showed glimpses of other galaxies where human settlements thrived, where alien species unknown to the Coalition worked alongside humans to develop new forms of civilization that balanced order and chaos in ways that promoted continuous evolution. "The question now," So Young concluded, "is not whether you will accept our help against the Devourers. The question is whether you will accept our guidance in becoming something more than you are. The universe is vast and full of wonders. You cannot imagine. We offer to show you how to reach them." The broadcast ended, leaving the entire galaxy in stunned silence. In every Coalition system, alien leaders stared at human installations that had been invisible moments before, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what they had just learned. The species they had exiled for being too chaotic had become the secret. Masters of galactic civilization, the invisible guardians who had been protecting them while they remained oblivious to both the threats they faced and the help they had been receiving. Humanity was no longer asking for acceptance. They were offering evolution to species who were finally beginning to understand how much they had to learn. 5 years had passed since Operation Sunrise changed the galaxy forever. Chan Wu, humanity's first inter-universal coordinator, stood in the Council of Infinite Voices, looking out at representatives from over 3,000 different species across 17 galaxies. The chamber existed in a space that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, accessible through dimensional gates that humanity had built throughout the known universe. The transformation had not been easy. Many Coalition species had initially reacted with fear and anger when they learned the truth about human presence. Some had declared war, others had retreated into isolation, and a few had attempted to develop weapons capable of fighting reality shapers. All of these responses had failed, but not because humanity had crushed them with superior force. The Drakmori delegation has completed their evaluation period, announced Ye Jin from her position at the Academy of Infinite Possibilities. They're ready to begin advanced chaos synthesis training. Chan Wu nodded, updating the records that tracked each species' progress through the evolutionary curriculum humanity had developed. The Drakmori had been among the most resistant initially, their warrior culture viewing human abilities as a form of cheating. But 6 months of watching, their worlds protected by invisible human guardians, had changed their perspective. "What about the Altarian Empire?" he asked. "Remarkable progress," Ye Jin replied with genuine pride in her voice. "They've mastered dimensional folding and are ready to establish their first intergalactic colony. Their synthesis of military order with chaotic adaptability is better than we expected." The Academy of Infinite Possibilities had become the center of galactic transformation, located in a pocket dimension that could accommodate millions of students simultaneously. It served as the training ground where alien species learned to transcend their limitations. The curriculum was based on humanity's own journey from exile to transcendence. Students learned to embrace controlled chaos, to find the balance between order and flexibility that allowed continuous growth. Some species adapted quickly, while others required centuries of careful guidance. The Zenthari crystal mines are making interesting progress, reported instructor Myung-ho. Their rigid structure actually helps them focus reality-shaping energy more efficiently than most species. They're developing techniques we hadn't considered. This was the beauty of humanity's approach to galactic transformation. Rather than forcing all species to become copies of humans, they helped each one find their own unique path to transcendence. The crystal beings used their structured thinking to create impossibly complex reality patterns. The hive mind species learned to reshape entire star systems through collective consciousness. The mechanical races discovered how to make their ordered logic flexible enough to adapt to any situation. But not every species chose evolution. Humanity had learned to respect this choice as well. The Thessian Republic has requested assignment to preserve World 7, Chan Wu noted, reading the latest diplomatic reports. They want to maintain their traditional way of life. The preserved worlds were humanity's solution for species that couldn't or wouldn't adapt to the new cosmic order. These carefully maintained pocket dimensions allowed traditional civilizations to continue existing exactly as they always had, protected from outside interference, but also isolated from the broader universe's evolution. "Are they sure?" Ye Jin asked. The Thessians showed real potential during their initial evaluation. Their leadership believes that changing their fundamental nature would mean ceasing to be Thessian, Chan Wu replied. "We must respect that choice." This respect for free will had become one of humanity's core principles. No species was forced to evolve. No civilization was compelled to accept human guidance. But those who chose to grow found themselves supported by resources and knowledge that made their transformation possible. The results had been extraordinary. Species that had been locked in ancient conflicts for millennia learned to synthesize their opposing viewpoints into more powerful hybrid approaches. Civilizations that had stagnated for millions of years discovered new directions for growth. Even the devourers had evolved, becoming partners in the careful cultivation of galactic consciousness. Status report from the Reality Engineering Corps, announced Myung-ho, who led the massive organization responsible for reshaping entire universes to be more hospitable to life and growth. The Corps had become humanity's greatest achievement. Working with evolved members of dozens of species, they had learned to redesign the fundamental laws of physics in targeted regions of space. Universes where faster-than-light travel was easier. Dimensions where consciousness could directly interface with matter, and realms where the barriers between thought and reality were thin enough to allow constant evolution. Project Infinite Garden is ahead of schedule, Myung-ho continued. We've successfully modified the physical laws in the Andromeda Galaxy to allow for stable chaos synthesis. Life there will evolve 10 times faster than in unmodified space. Any problems with the local species? Chan-Woo asked. They're adapting. Well, the accelerated evolution is allowing them to transcend their limitations within single generations, instead of requiring millions of years. Some are already developing capabilities that rival our own. This was exactly what humanity had hoped to achieve. Rather than creating an empire where humans ruled over lesser species, they had created a system where every civilization could become transcendent in its own unique way. The communication network chimed with an incoming priority message. Seo-jun, descendant of the original Exile Fleet commander, appeared as a holographic projection from his position near the edge of known reality. Chan-Woo, we've made contact with another exile situation, he reported. 3 galaxies beyond our current expansion zone, there's a species that's been cast out by their galactic community for being too unpredictable. Chan-Woo felt a familiar mixture of sadness and hope. The pattern continued throughout the universe. Chaotic species were regularly exiled by their more ordered neighbors, forced to either evolve or perish in the spaces between galaxies. Are they surviving? He asked. Barely. They've been in exile for only 50 years. But they're showing the same signs we did in the early stages. Reality in their region is beginning to respond to their consciousness, but they don't understand what's happening. Prepare a contact team, Chan-Woo ordered. Full diplomatic protocols. They'll need to choose their own path, but they should know they're not alone. This had become humanity's new mission. Not just to transform their own galaxy, but to serve as guides for other chaotic species throughout the universe. Each exile situation was different, each species unique, but the fundamental pattern remained the same. The communication network buzzed with activity as contact teams prepared for another first contact situation. These missions had become routine. Over the past few years, as humanity expanded their reach across the universe, searching for other exile situations and offering guidance to species facing the same tests they had overcome. Status update from the Multiverse Monitoring Station, came another report. This one from deep space observers who tracked cosmic patterns across multiple dimensions. We've detected 17 more potential exile situations in neighboring dimensional clusters. The universe appears to be entering a period of accelerated evolution. Species everywhere are being forced to choose between stagnation and transcendence. Chan-Woo absorbed this information with the calm that came from experience. Humanity had learned that their situation wasn't unique. It was part of a cosmic pattern that repeated throughout space and time whenever the universe needed to push forward into new possibilities. Expand our observer network, he decided. If the universe is accelerating evolution, we need to be ready to help guide that process. The Council of Infinite Voices had grown quiet as representatives from thousands of species absorbed the implications of these reports. They were no longer just dealing with local galactic transformation. They were part of a universe-wide evolutionary leap that would determine the future of consciousness itself. We've come far from the desperate refugees who crossed the barrier a century ago, Chan-Wu said, addressing the assembled representatives. We've become something our ancestors could never have imagined. The shepherds of infinite possibility, the gardeners of cosmic consciousness. He activated a display that showed the current extent of human influence. The map revealed settlements and academies spread across 17 galaxies, reality engineering projects that spanned multiple dimensions, and contact networks that reached species in places that hadn't existed when the journey began. But this is just the beginning. Every species we help transcend becomes a partner in guiding others. Every galaxy we transform becomes a beacon for lost civilizations. Every universe we touch becomes a stepping stone to possibilities that don't yet exist. The display expanded to show the true scope of what they were building. Not an empire in any traditional sense, but a network of evolved consciousness that spanned realities beyond counting. A community of transcendent beings working together to nurture the growth of awareness throughout existence itself. We are no longer human as our ancestors understood the term, Chan-Wu concluded.